Hey, what's going on, everybody? Andrew McFadyen-Ketchum here on day 7 of reading Visiting Hours, poem by poem. This is my second collection of poetry. It just came out with Stephen F. Austin University Press on March 12th, and due to the coronavirus, as is true for most everyone, all my events and such were shut down. So I'm just reading it day by day, poem by poem, more or less, to y'all through Facebook, just to, share it with you. So day 7, I'm on the 7th poem. It's the last poem of the... Excuse me. I'm not re-recording any of these. I'm just doing this kind of like it's live, Excuse me. It's the 7th poem, and it's the last poem of the first section. It's called Marysarias. I'll show you the title. It's a little bit unusual. And it's a lengthy poem. It's about 10 pages, so it takes a minute to read. This was the first poem I wrote for the collection. I wrote it in 2007 in graduate school. It's the first poem I took to workshop and got feedback. And it was really important to me at that time to write this poem while I was in grad school, because I knew that once I got out of grad school, I was going to be really too busy. Well, I was worried that I'd be too busy and wouldn't be able to tap into that deep writing time, which I was right about. And I knew that I wanted to get one of these first big Mary poems out and finished. And this was originally the title poem for the collection. It used to be called Marysarias. I changed it to Visiting Hours, kind of for obvious reasons. It's a better title, I think, just in general. Marysarias it's a meaningful title once you know what it means, but it's not a word. It's a word I made up, so it's like, what does that mean? So it seemed like this was, Visiting Hours was a better title, but it's interesting to me that this was the title poem for a long time and sort of the thesis of the book. So without further ado, thank you for being on here. I imagine you'll have to pause and come back. It's going to take about 10 minutes to read this. You can, of course, buy the collection, clicking the little link from me. I'll wash my hands and sign up for you and send you a free moon button. I've got buttons made of these pictures of the moon that have been taken. That, of course, is the O in Visiting Hours. I think I just gave everyone the bird. My bad. But without further ado, this is Marysarias. Ghosts, too, have dreams, she tells me. The living and the dead drawn out of the mist by strange reined beasts, chimeras with the bodies of lions, the giant croaking heads of toads, oxen in tandem, winged and tailed with the flames of controlled burns. Mary suspended in this dull talk. No wind, no earth, no moisture, no heat, light the sourceless lux of an animal's skin, sound the stir of breath fading from windows, echoes whisked through narrow corridors of brick and steel, wind weaving the dead bare limbs of many dead bare trees, and even if she could see beyond this thick vapor and steam, no mountains like broken teeth in the distance, no gulls scratching their beaks against the blackboard sky, no breakers breaking back into foam against the rock-strewn strands of dead oceans. Sometimes she's visited by family in the dream. Her mother and father, of course, both sisters. Once it was her great-grandfather who peered through the lamp-blacked window of his stagecoach, his lab coat crisp and white as creased sheets of paper, he who discovered the particle nature of light, he, one of 53 inventors of the atomic bomb. Sometimes it's those who found her. The security guard still haunted by the shape of her body beneath his pea-green parka, the nurse's lips still cold with the faint pulse felt when she touched her lips to Mary's. Other times, it's the last to see her alive. First, a man, a young lawyer standing in his suit before his office window, Nashville in its midwinter husk, Bruton Snuff Company, and cold neon above traffic and tree line, Mary climbing onto the ledge of the parking garage rooftop. Then, a woman, Young like my mother, in the years before those snakes of gray hair dropped from her temples, a waitress cupping a Pall Mall against the wind, tips singing a fire in her apron pocket, Mary falling from the sky. Once, an entire caravan of Nepalese children shuttled by in the fog, smiling and waving as if Mary were back in the Menang Valley, directing these small villagers, squeeze in. As she adjusts the camera's focus, the digital f-stop flipped to infinity, the rising low clouds of the valley angled into the frame. Sometimes, she tells me, strangers emerge from the half-light. Flight attendants coiling their hair in buns with number 2 pencils, migrants begging for work in the lot of a Home Depot, night janitors pushing their push brooms down the long, sterile hallways of their paychecks. Sometimes she calls out to them, but no one hears her. Always it ends the same, she says. Thick braids of mist swirl about her. Vague notion of moisture, vague notion of heat, a presence in the drifts of dust, then the slow breaking apart of the self. Frail wafts of her arm merging with the vapor, strands of hair drifting like dandelion heads from the roots, Mary joining hands with the fogged breath of God. Once, we were 2 kids who should have been, in love, carving shortcuts and jogs from the Nashville maps as we banged our heads to Nirvana turned up full tilt through my Nissan Datsun's single speaker, so bored with the smallness of our lives, only made smaller by our classmates who parked Friday nights around Love's Circle, downtown Nashville lit up below us like a deep-sea installation in the romantic dark. Exhausted condoms and the last backwash drags of George Dickel bottles tossed to the kudzu in strangleholds around the city's singular tower that pulsed its red light above us all. Both of us I imagined what life would be had our parents not met before we were conceived, our sisters not raised like sisters, had we met instead in the shade trees of my 13th August, or swinging in the rope nest woven in the high branches of the tallest magnolia of Centennial Park, where we taught one another to haggle tall, cold cans of beer from the homeless for $2 a pop, as the crowd. Hold on. Skipped a page. Both of us I imagined as we swung, what things would be had we met stumbling through the dark of McCabe's 9th green, had we counted the stars with our backs to the hard, flat surface of business decisions and Dixiecrats, the pole's yellow pennant flapping like a heart murmur in the breeze. She thinks she knows what it's about, the dream, but I don't ask. For this is a dream for me as well. Who else but the dream self would enter a dead girl's sleep? What else but the dream self would return to this parking garage rooftop? Mary, again 19, the oldest age she'll ever be. Nashville, 2003, the first and only snow of the year drifting out of the clouds, her 95 Corolla idling nearby in its spot, exhaust chuffing the air with a heat like that of the earth released into the cold universe. Dead girl dead now 17 years. Dead girl conceived beneath Sagitta, the arrow, Delphinus, the dolphin, Cygnus, the swan. Tell me what brings us here 17 years after the fact. Tell me what stuffs these hands in my vest pockets, what calls me into the night descending like a morning veil across the city. No pedestrians, no wind, no jets sighing overhead. Just the white-hot glow of a glass elevator tracing the spine of the Renaissance Hotel, a white-hot light rising through the deep, the distant ant-like outlines of its passengers, small silhouettes of Mary and me 17 years ago, leaning with our foreheads pressed to the cool curved glass as limousines and bellboys drop away from us, and Nashville unfolds like a relief map at our feet. From here, 40 floors above the blacktop, the penthouse restaurant of the Sheraton twirls like a spacecraft from another world. Is that Steiner Liff, the recycling plant of Pontiacs and Accords stamped in slumped stacks of crushed steel and glass? Is that I-40, and Briley Parkway, and the Cumberland silently dividing the city into precincts and slums, the Tennessee Tower looming darkly above the state capitol, the L&C marquee sizzling in the pan of night's unending hour that tonight, of all nights, passes too slowly for the bag ladies blanched by the street's steam grates, the lap dancers dangling their hair across the hard cocks of their patrons, as the crowd noise rises from the football stadium, as our quarterback toes the sideline, and all the aspiring songwriters strum all at once their acoustics, and all the listeners close their eyes and rise up in eulogy to Mary, as if this network of fiber optics and storm drains and vitrified clay piping was raised to sing our name, as if we placed our ears to its sidewalks, we'd hear Mary's arias beneath downtown's boulevards and one-ways, Mary's arias within the skyscrapers and highways and cul-de-sacs and empty lots, Marysarias within these brick and mortar walls, Marysarias in this lyric of rebar, this lyric of steel. Tell me, third child, tell me, third and final daughter slipped so easily from the womb, what is it really, that mineral we call moon candescing the sky? At night, is it a sheared halfpenny flipping end over end behind the blink of an eye? By day does it speak, soft mumblings of the grief we carry inside us, this grief having dropped yet again from its dark nest? Whitewashed harvest, whitewashed moon, for what have I come? Your hair picked up in the wind like blonde streamers of fire, your pelisse skirt and blouse, your feet skin bare against snowfall and frostbite. Mary, your death is the scent of half-burned candles. Mary, your death is the red bloodshot of a sleepless eye, your children who never cry out in the night, your children who never break the back of sleep. Speak, sad child, speak. Tell us of the lingering, the marble-eyed who trace silent paths through the grazing grounds of horses. Tell us of the everlasting, curled up with the underbellies of rocks where skinks and salamanders roost. I've come only for a sign, perhaps an injured bird hopping shadow to shadow, all the locked car doors swinging open at once. Perhaps others have come for the same reason. The security guard and nurse smiling sadly when they see one another. My sister writing a message upside down in the snow like a child writing backward in the breath of a bus window. Mary, what would you have me say? Do I tell you your father was in my wedding? Do I tell you how fiercely I loved my wife? Do I tell you your mother and father sold the house? Do I describe how your mother goes through your writings to add to each year's Christmas letter an entry from your notebooks? Or do I give you updates? Donald Trump is president. Bin Laden was buried in the salt of a secret sea. The world was shut down by a pandemic. Just added that, why not? I have found the love of my life. I finally have my children. Or do I take you back to the 3 a.m. my sister called? Do I show you the 2 policemen who entered your father's office? Do I tell you how they stood there in the door, their blue hats held before them like the orbs of all life and the fate of mankind grasped in the hands of God's first clergy? Do I show you how your mother still jolts awake in the night, the street rushing up at her at incredible speed? Or do we set all that aside? Do I take the chance? Do I find the words with which to woo the dead? Do I whisper into your ear? Do I touch you with both hands at once? Do your bones feel like bones beneath cloth? Do your bones feel like bones beneath cloth and skin? Tell me, please, do the living slip off their clothes for the dead? Do the dead huddle for warmth? How, my dear, does a dead girl shiver? There was a time when the sea was more gentle, when it did not rage against the land, when fish leapt from its surfaces to fend through the lucid air. There was a time when love could be taken in one's hand and shaped like clay, when, if you closed your hand around that clay and opened it, you'd find a human heart in your hands. In the dream, people visit me, she tells me, but you are never there. Once we were two kids who should have been in love, she says. In the dream, these visitors have places to go, but I cannot go with them. Always it ends the same, she says. I am hanging in a fog. No moisture, no heat. And even if I could see beyond the mist, no mountains like broken teeth in the distance. No gulls scratch their beaks against the blackboard sky. No breakers break back into foam against the rock-strewn strands of dead oceans. There's a sound like wind weaving the limbs of dead trees. There's a sound like the faint slip of breath from windows. And then I see it. The rooftop, the children, the man in his business suit, my mother, my father, the fog breath of God. Thanks, everybody. Try to have the best day you can. That's what I'm going to do. Be well.